Hello, I am a serious man, and I'm going to be doing my spoiler review of Spider-Man No Way Home. If you don't want the movie spoiled, then you better leave now because it's going to be spoiled. So I'll be giving you that in 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh my God! It was like the most amazing thing in my life! God, it was like the most amazing thing in the world! Oh my gosh, it was like the most amazing thing in the world. There was Spider-Man everywhere! There were the villains, and they're like coming from all the universes, and all the multiverse, and there were all these different universes, and then there was Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, it was the Green Goblin zooming around, and it was the Dr. Octopus, and it was Electro! Oh my gosh! And there was Matt Murdock's Daredevil was there! Oh my God! Oh, it was like the most amazing thing in my life!
He is a serious man. He is a serious man. He's a serious man with serious thoughts and a serious dream.
All right, so there's so much to talk about in this movie. Again. Spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, go walk away. But, so I went to go see Spider-Man No Way Home a 4th time. So first off, it's a 2.5-hour movie, and it does not seem like 2.5 hours. It flies by just like that. And, even after watching it 4 times, it's still just the pacing and everything is smooth. So even the scenes that are a little slow, like have a lot of dialogue, they're edited very quickly. They've got a lot of cuts. Even a scene where like Peter Parker and MJ are lying in separate beds in their homes on the phone, having a conversation on the phone, kind of a slow conversation. It's a slow scene. It's just an emotional scene, but there's a lot of cuts. It goes back and forth between the two without losing any of the emotion, without losing the reactions and the response and the emotion and everything. It's still it's dynamic. It doesn't stay still. So the movie is constantly moving, and that's a good thing. All right, so I think the first thing I'm going to do is to note some of the difference. There's a lot of differences between the trailer and the movie. And what you find is that a lot of the scenes in the trailer were actually alternate takes or alternate takes. So for example, in the trailer, when Doctor Strange says, "Let's Scooby-Doo this crap. Come on, guys, please Scooby-Doo this crap." In the movie, Doctor Strange says shit. He says, "Let's Scooby-Doo this shit." And then after MJ gives her line, "Well, I know a little magic word called please." And then Doctor Strange says, "Please Scooby-Doo this shit." So that's one difference between the trailer and the movie. One thing I noticed too, and I don't know, it could just be my imagination, but when I watched the trailer, I did not think that Dr. Octopus's de-aging technology, the Lolita that they use, which is the technology they use to make the face look younger. I had issues on the trailer. I had issues with it. It didn't look very sharp to me. But in the movie, it's definitely improved, and it's definitely finished. a lot of the special effects that maybe didn't look as good in the trailer look better in the movie. Another difference is, a major difference is that in the trailer, when Doctor Strange is talking about the spell that he's going to do, and Wong says, "Do not cast that spell," and Doctor Strange says, "Okay, I won't," and then winks as Wong says, "Good," and leaves. But now in the movie that doesn't happen. In the movie, Doctor Strange says, when Doctor Strange talks about the spell, Wong says, "Oh, it's a very dangerous spell," and then Doctor Strange says, "Well, do you remember the full moon party do you remember the full moon party?" And Wong says no, and he says, "See? Exactly. We've used the spell before." And Wong winds up, instead of saying "do not use that spell," Wong winds up saying, "Well, okay, just leave me out of it," and he leaves. So he basically gives in. And so, which is a difference from the trailer, because in the trailer, Wong just said, "Do not use that spell," and Doctor Strange says, "Okay, I won't," and then wink, and which is kind of a weird thing in the trailer. Makes you almost think maybe an alternate version of Doctor Strange did do that. But anyways, there's another line in the trailer. I believe Doc Ock says, in the trailer, Doc Ock says, "You're going out there fighting ghosts." And I think in the context of the trailer, it was hinting that they were going to go out and find all the other characters, and they were all ghosts. And in the movie, they're just talking specifically about Norman Osborn, and Doc Ock says, "You're running off to fight a ghost." The Green Goblin. There's also a major difference in the trailer when Doc Ock. Well, there's a line where Doc Ock says that all of these characters are destined to die at the hands of Spider-Man. That line's not in it. There's an edit there. He does. The idea comes through that many of the people that they send back are going to die the minute they come back. They go back, and excuse me, particularly Electro and Doc Ock and Green Goblin are going to die the minute they get sent back. In the trailer, he said, Doc Ock simply says, "I'm sorry, kid," and Peter says, "So am I," which is a line that's not in the movie. Right before snapping in, grabbing the box with the spell that Doc Ock is gonna use to send everyone back. And in the movies, Peter does not say "I am too" and grab it. There's a moment where he's Doc Ock or Doctor Strange is getting ready to cast the spell to send everyone back. And then there's a moment, and he's looking around, and he's looking at all the characters, and they're like kind of begging him, and there's a tension there, and that's the moment he swipes the box with the spell that has the spell trapped, contained, and runs off with it. And so it's different than the trailer. Another major difference. Also there's obviously there are a few characters. There are a couple of characters that are edited out of some major parts of the trailer, namely 2 additional Spider-Men that might have appeared in that scene at the end. And so, yeah, that was a change. Now, there's a major thematic point in the movie, which is basically the old Spider-Man adage: with great power comes great responsibility. But it comes with a bit of a difference. So Doctor Strange tells Peter at one point, the problem isn't with Mysterio. The problem is you trying to live 2 lives. So after they've cast a spell and it's failed, and Doctor Strange says to Peter, he says, you know, the problem isn't with Mysterio. The problem's with you trying to live 2 lives. And then, so there's this idea of the 2 identities, that Peter Parker is trying to live 2 separate lives. He's trying to be Peter Parker and Spider-Man and trying to have it all. That's the key point. Doctor Strange says, basically, you're trying to have it all, and you can't. You have to choose. Well, the Green Goblin comes along, and he has a different idea. And the idea that he has is that people of great power, people who have great power, don't have to choose. They take what they want. They make what they need for themselves and take it by force. He says he sees the same problem that Doctor Strange sees. He sees Peter Parker. He says, I watch you struggle. I watch you struggle to have. I watch you struggle to have everything you want, while the world tries to make you choose. But gods don't choose. Gods don't have to choose. We take. And so the dichotomy here is the dilemma, the conflict is between the idea that Peter Parker has to choose between being Spider-Man and having a normal life. And the Green Goblin says, no, you don't have to choose. People who have power, they take. And that is what power is all about. Power is about taking what you want and screw everyone else. Now, this all comes to a head at a point in the movie where this all comes ahead. It involves Aunt May. And Aunt May brings in sort of the other line. The Uncle Ben line. That with great power comes great responsibility. And we finally have that line for the first time in this MCU version of Spider-Man. Now, I couldn't help but notice that it has a little bit of a different context, a very different context. Because in the comic books, Peter Parker got his power and he did not use it responsibly. He used it to make himself famous, to try to earn a little bit of money. And then he let a criminal go. That criminal wound up killing Uncle Ben. And that's where he learned the lesson of power and responsibility. Because if he had done something, if he had stopped the criminal, his Uncle Ben wouldn't have died. As as Tom Holland's Peter Parker tells Tony Stark in Civil War, when bad things, when you have the power to do something and you don't, when the bad things happen, they happen because of you. And that's the essence of the power and responsibility. But in this movie, Peter Parker has an easy way out to send everyone back the way they are. And Aunt May is the one who says he has a responsibility to try to fix the problems of these supervillains. And so Peter takes on the responsibility, and because he makes that choice, because he makes the choice to be responsible, that is why Aunt May dies. And so when the time comes and the Green Goblin kills Aunt May, he presents Peter Parker with the other opportunity, the other potential possibility, which is that with great power comes the ability to take what you want. And if you use the morality, as he says, your weakness, your morals are your weakness. Morality is your weakness. You're strong enough to take everything you want. Too weak to take it. So the difference ultimately is that in the movie version, in this version, it is by taking responsibility and trying to take responsibility for his actions and trying to fix the situation, he causes Aunt May's death. And the Green Goblin rubs his face in it. He says, I'm here to teach you a lesson. I'm going to teach you a lesson. He does that by killing Aunt May, which is a very sad moment. Again, if you didn't want spoilers, you shouldn't have come, okay? So, but this actually got me thinking a little bit about the question of the adage, the Spider-Man motto, with great power comes great responsibility. Now, there was a comic book writer, J. Michael Straczynski, who did a run in the early 2000s, in the mid to late 2000s. He actually wrote the One More Day story, in which Peter Parker got Mephisto to erase everyone's memory, and so that Peter Parker wouldn't be Spider-Man. But J. Michael Straczynski also had a line which he gave to Ezekiel. And Ezekiel was a Spider-Man, an older sort of Spider-Man character who had the power passed on to him. It's from the Anasazi, the totem, the god, the spider god. But he chose not to use the power. And Peter Parker tells him the motto, with great power comes great responsibility. And Ezekiel asks, okay, and what comes with great responsibility? And there's no answer. That question, with great power comes great responsibility. So what comes with great responsibility? Well, the answer is in this movie, and that is, with great responsibility comes the sacrifice. And Peter Parker learns in this movie about responsibility, but also that responsibility comes with a sacrifice. So rather than learning about responsibility because of the death of Uncle Ben, who he could have saved but didn't save, he learns about the power or the importance of responsibility by the death of Aunt May, who dies because he does the right thing, which is a bit turning the thing around quite a bit. Instead of Uncle Ben dying because Peter Parker didn't do the right thing, Aunt May dies because Peter does the right thing. And it's on her deathbed, right as she's dying, that she tells him to remember that with great power comes great responsibility. And that's the emotional moment in the film. Now, that sacrifice comes into play as everything comes to a head at the very end, as we come to the final ultimate moment, as Tom Holland, Peter Parker, after the three Spider-Men rescue the other characters, the villains, save them from their maladies, in comes the Green Goblin, and Peter has there's a very brutal fight. There are a couple of very brutal fights between Tom Holland Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. There's the one in the right before Aunt May dies, and then there's the one at the end. And at the very end, Tom Holland takes down the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin puts the pumpkin bomb into the little box holding the spell, which breaks open the box and unleashes the spell. And now all the universe is going to crack open, and all these people from all over are going to come in because they know who Peter Parker is. And in that moment, Tom Holland, Spider-Man, takes out the Goblin's glider, takes him out, and there's, he gets him down onto the Cap shield, lying in the water. And the Green Goblin says, Too weak to send me back. Too weak to send me home to die. And Peter says, No, I just want to kill you myself. And Tom Holland goes after the Green Goblin, and he is going to kill him. He is going to. He's beating Norman Osborn, beating him and beating him and beating him. And finally, he grabs that glider, and he's going to drive it into the Green Goblin. And this is going to be it. And meanwhile, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are watching. Tobey rushes in and grabs the glider and stops Tom Holland, Spider-Man, from killing the Green Goblin. And they look into each other's eyes. And Tom Holland stops. And Green Goblin stabs Tobey Maguire in the back. And then I think Andrew Garfield injects him with the serum, and he turns into Norman Osborn. And he's all better again. Or apparently, for now anyways. And then Tom Holland, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, has to make an ultimate sacrifice. I mean, he does the right thing in the end. Actually, he has to be brought back from the brink by another Peter Parker. But he does do the right thing in the end. And after going to a very dark place, like Andrew Garfield warned him. But then he makes the ultimate sacrifice. Because Doctor Strange can't hold back all the people that are to come in. The universe is cracking open. The multiverse is cracking open. And that's where Tom Holland goes and says, why don't you make everyone forget that Peter Parker exists? Now, the whole reason why we had the conflict, why all of these characters were brought in, was because Peter interrupted the spell. The original spell that Doctor Strange was casting was going to make the whole world forget that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. That's it. Make the world forget that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. And then Peter didn't want that. He was in the middle of casting. He's like, but wait, what about my girlfriend? What if I don't want her to know? And then Doctor Strange is all, okay, fine, whatever. Okay, we'll alter it. And then he's all, but what about Ned, my best friend Ned? And he's like, okay, fine, but don't alter it anymore. And then he's all, but what about my Aunt May? Oh my gosh, we had this trouble. He tells, stop it. And he's all, but happy. No, I'm not happy. I'm quite upset, actually. And he's all, no, Happy's a guy. Blah, blah. Okay. And then the final thing he says is, basically, everybody who knew I was Spider-Man before should still know. Boom. And then the spell is contained. So what happened as a result was that everyone from every universe who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man are brought in. Or at least some got through. The rest, the ones that didn't get contained by the spell into the little box, those ones got through, which were the villains, the 5 villains, and the 2 Spider-Men. And maybe some other people that we don't know about, like maybe Venom. Or other people could have come through that didn't show up for that conflict. And that could have easily happened. So people who said, oh, well, Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy didn't come through, but, well, they could have. They could have just not shown up because they weren't relevant to the story. But anyways, the point is that because of when the spell gets loose, everyone who knew Peter Parker is starting to come through. And so then Peter comes up with the idea, what if you recast the spell, but this time make it so that nobody knows Peter Parker even exists. Not just that he's Spider-Man. Just make the entire universe, the entire multiverse, erase Peter Parker's memory from everywhere. And so that's what happens. And that's the sacrifice he makes. He sacrifices MJ and Ned and all of his friends. He sacrifices his high school education because there are no records. There are now no records of his existence. So he starts from square one. At the very end, he's got a GED manual. He's going to be studying to get his GED. And meanwhile, he goes back to see MJ and Ned, and he sees that they're happy and doesn't want to mess with that. And so he ultimately learns the responsibility, but he also learns that this is a necessary sacrifice in order for him to take on the mantle, to be fully responsible. He has to make this sacrifice, and that's okay. And that's where he finally becomes the Spider-Man that we've always wanted, the Spider-Man that he never quite was, but now he is. Now, this video wouldn't be complete without mentioning Magic Ned. Now, there's a bit of how do you say, a Mary Sue moment that Ned Leeds has. So, Spider-Man, after Spider-Man locks Doctor Strange up, ties him up in the mirror universe, and steals the box away, and he takes Doctor Strange's sling ring, the device he uses to make portals, and he gives it to Ned, and Ned suddenly has the ability to make portals. Sort of. He struggles with the ability, but he can do it. And then he talks about having, his mom. He actually, they foreshadow it a little bit in the beginning when he tells Doctor Strange, asks him how he became Sorcerer Supreme, says, my mom says we have a little magic in our family. And then later he has the sling ring and he's able to sort of make portals. In the final battle on the Statue of Liberty, when he's falling, the Sorcerer Supreme's the cape comes and grabs him and floats him to the ground, and he's wearing the cape for a while, and there are little hints of him being like, "Oh, wink, wink, can I be, I'm a magic guy." So there's that. Now, it's a plot device, but it's also the sudden powers that he has. It's also the way they introduce the new Spider-Man, because it's the way they introduce the other Spider-Man, because it's Ned Leeds thinking, "Oh man, I wish I could see Peter Parker," and then there's Peter Parker. And when Spider-Man comes onto the scene, jumps through the portal, and everybody cheers, and pulls off the mask, and it's Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, and you're not Peter. It was like, that was an interesting moment. Everybody seemed to love. And then Toby comes through same way through the portals. But a note on that. So there are slight references. Ned Leeds asks Toby at one point, "Did you have a best friend?" Because he's interested, because he's the best friend of Spider-Man. And Toby looks really sad and says, "Yes, I had a best friend. He died in my arms right after trying to kill me." Which is actually sort of a half-truth. Because Toby doesn't actually tell him. He tells him that, his friend died in his arms after trying to kill him. But what he doesn't tell them is, if you remember Spider-Man 3, that's not exactly what happened. Harry Osborn tried to kill him, but then he came to save his life. He came to save his life and save MJ at the end, and that he died saving him from Venom using the Goblin glider to kill him. He saves him at the last minute. So the truth is, he actually died saving Peter's life. So I don't know why he tells Ned, "Oh, he died in my arms after trying to kill me." Other than to make Ned Leeds be like, "Ooh, I'm disappointed," or, "Well, I did that." But also, it also seems like it's a little bit of a stretch the way he tells the story. A little bit different. but almost as if it's simply designed to maybe foreshadow Ned Leeds' future, because in the comic books, Ned Leeds was never really a best friend of Peter Parker. Ned Leeds was more of a rival, co-worker, and a rival for Betty Brant's affection. And he did become the Hobgoblin in the comic books. And I've been wondering if the whole magic thing is a misdirect, or the other possibility is that the Hobgoblin. So there are various versions of the Hobgoblin in the comic books. The original, or I should say, one of the originals, was Ned Leeds. Ned Leeds became the Hobgoblin to take down, as a journalist, to sort of investigate the criminal underworld and to help take down the Kingpin. And as the Hobgoblin, he teamed up with the Black Rose, who was Richard Fisk, who's the Kingpin's son. And the Kingpin just made a reappearance in Hawkeye, spoiler. Even that's not a great show, but Daredevil made an appearance in this movie as, well, at least Matt Murdock as the lawyer for Peter Parker. So with the Daredevil characters, with the Kingpin finally back in the MCU, it opens up the possibility that Ned Leeds as Hobgoblin could do that story arc where he, with the Black Rose, where he helps take down the Kingpin. And at this point, it would be a Ned Leeds who doesn't know Peter Parker's secret identity. But it's possible if, Ned Leeds is going to MIT now. So the implication is that he's not going to be in New York. He and MJ are going to be in a different city. So Peter Parker is going to be living in a totally different environment in New York, in Midtown, not in Queens, but in Midtown, Maine, Manhattan, and that Ned Leeds and MJ are going to Boston. So they'll be a separate cities. But anyways, the Hobgoblin actually the Hobgoblin has actually had a history of magic in the comic books. The Ned Leeds Hobgoblin got special powers in some way, I forget. But then also there was Jason Macendale, who was a later Hobgoblin, who became Jack-o'-lantern. And Jack-o'-lantern had supernatural powers, so like a super magic powers. And so there is a possibility that they'll take Ned Leeds into that direction of the Jack-o'-lantern direction. Hobgoblin / Jack-o'-lantern story, kind of mesh the two together. That's a possibility. And they could bring in the Kingpin and all these other things in the future. So they opened the door for that. In the beginning of the movie, there was kind of, it's interesting. In the beginning of the movie, they set up. So at the beginning of the movie, you have this triangular relationship between Peter Parker, MJ, and Ned Leeds. And there's a moment where they tease the possibility of Ned Leeds as the third will, as that leading to something, which it never does. But at least not in the way that you might think. So the beginning of the movie, there's this scene when Peter Parker and MJ are lying on the roof and, just talking about how crazy things have gotten. And they're just about to kiss. And Ned Leeds pops up and says, "Oh, finally some privacy," interrupting them in the middle of their about to kiss. The joke being is he's interrupting their private, intimate moment. And then they talk about the plans for going to MIT, moving in together, and they put their hands together. And Ned Leeds does it in kind of an awkward way, where it's like he's sort of the odd man out in that situation. But then you fast forward to the end of the movie. After the spell's been done, and everyone forgets who Peter Parker is, and Peter Parker goes into the coffee shop where MJ works, and MJ and Ned are the close friends, the close, tight-knit friends, the buddies. They're going to go to the same school together. And Peter Parker is the odd man out. And this is the moment where he's planning to sort of tell her who he is and try to make her remember him. But then he watches and he sees the two of them together. He sees them both happy. They're going on. They're going to be going on with their education. They don't know he exists, and they're fine with it. And he sees that, and he turns around and he walks away, and gives up on that. But interestingly, it turns around. It turns around from the beginning, where Ned Leeds is sort of the third wheel, to the very end where Peter Parker shows up and he's potentially the third wheel, but he walks away and leaves Ned and MJ to themselves. Which I guess you could call that not foreshadowing, but a sort of a bookend for the plot. It's not the exact beginning, but it's pretty close. Pretty much the very beginning and the very end. You have these two moments of the three of them not quite being connected in the same way. In the scene at the beginning, it's Ned Leeds trying to insert himself, trying to keep himself into the relationship between the three of them, among the three of them, and kind of inserting himself into their relationship. And then at the end, it's Peter Parker finding himself trying to insert himself into their relationship, the Ned Leeds and MJ relationship, and finding that he just can't do it. So he walks away, and that's another sacrifice that he makes. Now I guess I'm going to talk about the three Spidermen. Now, this is really the highlight of the film. There's a lot of good stuff in the movie, but when you have Toby and Andrew Garfield and Tom all come together, the dialogue is spot on. It's perfect. They make references to the differences in all the characters. The fact that Tobey Maguire's webbing comes out of his wrists, and they address the fact that Andrew Garfield's never fought an alien, but the other two have, and Tom Holland's fought an alien in space, and they mentioned Toby's back. Oh, and they have the meme with the three Spider-Men standing over there in the lab coats, and when Ned says, "Peter," and they all look up and they're looking at each other and go, "Oh, he's Peter. He's Peter. Which Peter are you talking about?" He's Peter. He's Peter. He goes, "No, Peter Parker." And he's all, "No, we're all Peter. We're all Peter Parker. Same thing." And he's all, "The computer." Andrew Garfield gets his moment where he saves MJ when she falls. There are little moments between Toby and Doc Ock, and between Toby and Sandman, where they get to re-explore their moments together, and Andrew Garfield with Electro and with Lizard, and then Tom Holland basically gets, and Tobey Maguire gets the moment with the Green Goblin, where he steps in between him and the glider, because in the Tobey Maguire movies, the Green Goblin gets impaled on his own glider. And in this movie, Tom Holland Spider-Man is going to kill him with the glider in the same way, and Tobey gets in there and gets in the way and saves him. There's a really, really emotional moment when, so right after Aunt May dies, and Tom Holland, Peter Parker, goes up on the building, the rooftop, his special place, and he's hiding there. And Ned and MJ are worried about him. And that's when Ned's like, I wish we could see Peter, and then accidentally creates the Nexus that brings in Andrew Garfield. And Andrew Garfield pops in, and there's a moment, and then Tobey pops in, and then in a drawn out way, and then they have a little fight, a little bit of a playful little exchange. And then they track down Peter, and they go to save him. They go to comfort him and hug him and tell him, we understand, and and then they decide, they agree. They all share their power and responsibility stories, their respective stories. And then they agree, Tobey and Andrew agree, that they're going to help the villains, to send him back, because that would be the right thing to do. And Andrew Garfield gets at least that one moment where he says, "Oh, I've already fixed the lizard, so I can handle that. Like, I got this. What? I got this. I got it." There's a lot of great moments there. That pretty much the chemistry between the three characters is amazing. The three actors, the way everything went together is, I think, probably one of the best things about it. It could have gone so badly, and it went great. It's just watching all that. It's not a lot of time. I mean, it is. I mean, maybe half an hour, but it's time. It's not an enormous amount of time, but they used every second was useful, and and nothing slowing it down, and every moment they used was really great. So one thing I want to talk about is so what this movie really does right. It does a lot of things, but one of the things that it does is it fixes a lot of the problems that I and other people have had with this version of Spider-Man. It's been light. The MCU Spider-Man has been very light on the power and responsibility thing. So Peter Parker has been very irresponsible and kind of stupid, clumsy, and including in this movie, and at least in the first act, he's been very clumsy. And what you kind of find in this movie is that this entire trilogy has sort of been his origin story. So he hasn't been Spider-Man. He hasn't been Spider-Man until the end of this movie, and then you realize that now he is Spider-Man. The fact that Tony Stark, Iron Man, created Spider-Man, which is something that you can never really undo. Not really, but at least they sort of backed it up a bit. They gave Peter his own creativity. So he's out there designing new suits and using the technology. When Doc Ock attacks him, the nano suit attaches to his tentacles, and Peter's able to take, like a Bluetooth, take over the tentacles through his suit and lock him up. And that's why he can't use the spider iron suit for the first half of the movie, because it's tied up controlling his device. His iron suit is tied up controlling the tentacles until they can fix Dr. Octopus. And by fixing the chip, the inhibitor chip that went bad in Spider-Man 2, and which is why he lost control to the arms. So there's that. And then there's a neat moment when Peter Parker and Doctor Strange are fighting. And there's that scene in the trailer where Doctor Strange pushes Peter out of his body. And he's out in his astral form. and Doctor Strange is trying to grab the box out of his hand. But Spider-Man's reflexes are such that he keeps moving and dodging even though Peter's out of his body, because his spider instinct is so strong. And there's a part of his spider instinct that's related to the astral plane, something maybe a little spiritual, which could be similar to what's in the comic, in some of the later comic book interpretations. And then Peter's able to, in the mirror universe, when Doctor Strange is trying to take him out, to put him down so that he can bring back the box and send the people back, Peter does the math and is able to figure out the right way to shoot and everything to trap Doctor Strange, grab the box and trap Doctor Strange in the mirror universe, which, doesn't seem very probable. That he could trap him there like that. He does steal his sling ring, which maybe that's the idea, that because he steals his sling ring, he doesn't have the ability to make portals until Ned Leeds creates the portal at the end of the movie that Doctor Strange comes out of. Maybe, I don't know. But Peter's a lot more competent in this movie, even though ultimately everything that happens is his fault because of his clumsiness. But he gets better. And you see his scientific know-how, working up the cures for the villains, which maybe, again, is a little too easy. The other Spider-Man help, which is good. The first cure for Norman Osborn doesn't work, which is probably because Norman was the one working on it, and he was secretly scuttling it as the Green Goblin while he was pretending to help. Now, the Dr. Octopus initially... So of the villains, Doc Ock is initially the most resistant to Peter trying to help them. The Green Goblin appears to be the most receptive to help. Sandman is kind of indifferent. He just wants to go home. He's willing to sit and wait. And Electro is a little skeptical, but he agrees to go along just to see what's going on, see what happens. And the Doc Ock is helped. They help Doc Ock first, and he becomes an ally then right away. And then Peter gets his tingle, and he realizes something's wrong, and he catches the Green Goblin out. And the Green Goblin says, Norman's on sabbatical. Norman's out on sabbatical. And Electro's all, what the fuck? What the hell is that? So at that moment, the Green Goblin makes his intentions known, that he's not going to let Peter change him. Get rid of my better half. Did you really think I'd let you get rid of my better half? My other half? Maybe not better half, but hit to himself, maybe. I've watched you beneath Norman's cowardly eyes. I've seen you struggle to have everything you want, while the world tries to make you choose. Gods don't have to choose, we take. Sorry, that's that line again. William Dafoe was actually really, really good in this movie. There was the villainous moments, but also the subtle things, like the when he's just the schizophrenic guy on the street who doesn't know where he is, and he's in another universe, and he just wants to go home, and he doesn't know where he is. And he wants some help, and he's, stealing food, putting food in his pocket from the feast center while Peter and Aunt May are talking. Blurry in the background, but you still see that moment, and that's a hilarious moment. Anyway, so at the moment when the Green Goblin reemerges, something happens. Electro suddenly, that's his moment to strike. He's like, I'm done with this. It took me a little bit more off to figure out why the Sandman would suddenly act up. But either way, they put Doc Ock out the window, and he's gone for nearly the rest of the movie. Doc Ock goes out the window. Electro is, Doc Ock goes out the window and down because he gets pushed out because he's trying to help. Electro is like, hell, I'm out of here. I want to keep the power. And then Sandman's all, just hell with it. I'm gone. And he leaves. And the Green Goblin and Peter go at it. And that's the first fight scene that leads up to the death of Aunt May. And you have that. So I'm sort of working my way backwards, I guess. You're introduced to Electro and Sandman. So Sandman sees Spider-Man, and when he first sees Spider-Man and thinks it's Peter Parker that he knows. And so Electro is fighting, Spider-Man's fighting Electro. Sandman steps in to help Spider-Man. And then after they take down Electro, Sandman and Spider-Man are kind of joshing, and Spider-Man's like, yeah, I'm a different Peter Parker. I'm from a different universe. He's like, okay, different universe. That's cool. And then Max Dillon is nude, and but then Peter Parker zaps Electro off to the prison, and Sandman sees it and thinks, wait, what's going on? What's going on? That's not right. Did you kill him? Did you just kill him? And then he's all like, no, trust me. And then he zaps him, and he goes to the prison to be held by Doctor Strange. So of the villains, Doc Ock is initially the most resistant to Peter trying to help them. The Green Goblin appears to be the most receptive to help. Sandman is kind of indifferent. He just wants to go home. He's willing to sit and wait. And Electro is a little skeptical, but he agrees to go along just to see what's going on, see what happens. And the Doc Ock is helped. They help Doc Ock first, and he becomes an ally then right away. And then Peter gets his tingle, and he realizes something's wrong, and he catches the Green Goblin out. And the Green Goblin says, Norman's on sabbatical. Norman's out on sabbatical. And Electro's all, what the fuck? What the hell's that? So at that moment, the Green Goblin makes his intentions known, that he's not going to let Peter change him. Get rid of my better half. Did you really think I'd let you get rid of my better half? My other half? Maybe not better half, but hit to himself maybe. I've watched you beneath Norman's cowardly eyes. I've seen you struggle to have everything you want, while the world tries to make you choose. Gods don't have to choose, we take. Sorry, that's that line again. William Dafoe was actually really, really good in this movie. There was the villainous moments, but also the subtle things, like the when he's just the schizophrenic guy on the street who doesn't know where he is, and he's in another universe, and he just wants to go home, and he doesn't know where he is. He wants some help, and he's stealing food, putting food in his pocket from the feast center while Peter and Aunt May are talking. Blurry in the background, but you still see that moment, and that's a hilarious moment. Anyway, so at the moment when the Green Goblin reemerges, something happens. Electro suddenly, that's his moment to strike. He's like, I'm done with this. It took me a little bit more off to figure out why the Sandman would suddenly act up. But either way, they put Doc Ock out the window, and he's gone for nearly the rest of the movie. Doc Ock goes out the window. Electro is Doc Ock goes out the window and down because he gets pushed out because he's trying to help. Electro is like, hell, I'm out of here. I want to keep the power. And then Sandman's all, just hell with it. I'm gone. And he leaves. And the Green Goblin and Peter go at it. And that's the first fight scene that leads up to the death of Aunt May. And you have that. Okay. So you have the two villains cosmetically that are very different from their original movies and probably improved on. You got the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin comes in exactly as he was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. But then right away, Norman has a breakthrough moment, and he takes off the mask and he breaks the mask, trying to get away from Green Goblin. And he runs away off to feast to Aunt May and everything. But so he loses the mask. And what he gains is the glasses and the cowl and I think it was the purple cowl. So he's more like the Green Goblin from the comics. Electro first appears in the universe as his normal blue self from the Garfield universe. But then, as he takes power from the MCU verse, it's a different energy. So the electrical signature of each universe is unique. So as he pulls in the power and the electricity from the universe, it changes him. And so then it makes him green and gives him the green and yellow, and the sort of the hat image of the electricity on his head. And it turns him into cool Jamie Foxx instead of that weird geeky Jamie Foxx. Which, yeah, I prefer. I think I prefer the cool Jamie Foxx. It's a lot more interesting. Whatever. So So there's that. So another way that they fix the MCU Spider-Man is that they take away all of the extra things, the MCU things that were holding him back. All of the extra heroes that all knew who he was, the support, Ned Leeds, everybody knowing who he was, the fact that he didn't really have a secret identity to begin with, to be honest. Like, nobody in the MCU has. But now by the end of the movie, they brought all of that back to maybe a more canonical sort of Spider-Man character. A loner, someone who's on his own, has to, scrape to get by. That's going to be the character moving forward. Maybe even more so, really even more so than any other Spider-Man now, because he doesn't have Aunt May. He doesn't have Happy. He doesn't have any of the Marvel people, at least as Peter Parker. As Peter Parker, he doesn't have any of the support from all the Marvel universe. He doesn't even have Aunt May, Happy, anybody. Ned, MJ, nobody. None of his even Flash. None of his high school classmates are going to know who he is. So that may be even more extreme than any other version. So we'll see how that goes. But they do play up the part. They do play up the fact that he has worked with a superhero team and the other Spider-Men don't know how to work with his team. So when the three of them are trying to work together, to take out the villains, and it starts out as quite a mess, and Tom Holland tells the other guys, is like, no, wait. Well, the other two, Andrew and Toby, are both like, look, I've never worked as part of a team before. I've always been alone. I don't know what to do. And like Tom Holland's all like, well, guess what, guys? I've worked with a team. I worked with the Avengers. And Toby's all, the Avengers? That's great. What is that? And then Andrew Garfield's all, is that a band? Were you in a band? And Tom Holland's all, no. The Avengers, they're Earth's mightiest heroes. And then Toby's all, wait, what did he say? How is this helping? How is this helping? And Tom Holland's all, well, we need to work as a team. So, and then Toby's like, okay, here's the plan. We all strike one target. We pick one target at a time and we team up, and then they come together and then Andrew Garfield says, I love you guys. And the other two Spider-Men, thank you. Very funny movie. So then, yeah. It's funny too that they take Flash Thompson to an interesting place in this movie. Flash Thompson has been kind of a mild version of the comic book. Not so much a real threat, more of a puny threat to Peter Parker, a minuscule threat. Which I guess if you really go back to the comic books, apart from Flash and Peter actually getting into a fight, so that an actual boxing match they're starting to get into at one point. But other than a few physical altercations, for the most part, Flash Thompson was sort of just a puny Parker bully that shouted names. But Flash in the MCU has always kind of gotten me. Like, he's funny. I mean, it's kind of funny what they do with him. But one of the problems I had with the MCU is that Peter doesn't really have any personal adversaries. Like Flash. I mean, Flash Thompson's just kind of a joke. people at school like him. He's not a loner. And I think one thing about Spider-Man really that especially the Andrew Garfield one got right better than anything is that he is a loner. He does tend to be to himself. He's not strictly a geek, because I know some people talk about Andrew Garfield's the skateboard thing as being kind of like, oh, that's off the wall. But the truth is, if there had been skateboarders in, when Spider-Man came out in the 60s, he would have been there. He wasn't strictly a nerd, however you want to face that. I've never seen Peter Parker as strictly the nerd. He was an outsider. He was sort of an outcast. He wasn't the athletic kind. He wasn't, he didn't get along with the kids at school. But he wasn't necessarily, oh, Mr. Poindexter, Mr. Geek, Mr. Dark, oh, the Chess Club, And the one thing about the MCU Spider-Man, which is a little odd, I thought, is that he goes to a special school, so everybody at his school is sort of special. And that extends to Flash Thompson. But anyway, in this movie, Flash has a very interesting turn, because now that he finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, the kid he hates is the hero he loves. He makes a remarkable turn, and all of a sudden, he's Spider-Man's best friend. Oh, his best friends. And he has a book that he's promoting. Flashpoint. Me and my best friend Spider-Man. The stories, the history, the love, all the rest of it. And so that was kind of funny. Yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to talk. So there's no way that the writers of the movie could have been this spot on. Particularly since it was something that happened, I think something that happened after the movie, or very, very closely before the movie. So in the opening, when Peter Parker's identity is revealed, middle of Times Square, he rushes down to get MJ, and a lady rushes up and touches Spider-Man, and then says, "Oh my gosh, did you see that? He hit me." And the funny thing is that it was so hilarious, because that week, Jussie Smollett's lawyer literally did that exact same thing to the judge. She went up to the bench, was talking to him, and then he maybe leaned forward, and she was like, "Oh my God, he attacked me, he hit me," and then stormed out of the courtroom with her mom, crying after faking an attack by the judge. And that moment, I just thought it was hilarious, because there are a lot of other maybe possible political references without being so specific. There are so three of the teachers at the school. Two are sympathetic. One worships Peter Parker now. He's a hero. And then one is like, okay, no, Mysterio was right. So you have the expression Mysterio was right, which smacks very similar to the expression used by some maybe sort of right-leaning people, that Alex Jones was right, as all of his predictions come true one by one. And then you've got JB Smoove, the teacher calling the other teacher a conspiracy theorist because he believes Peter's a villain. There's references, to the Spider-Man cultists, which is something that's often used. It's a term often used, actually, for Trump QAnon supporters, but also people on the left that are maybe extreme, calling them cultists is a very common expression, and that's something they use to refer to the. It's a term used by J. Jonah Jameson to refer to the people who defend Spider-Man. Why do people keep defending this guy? They keep defending him. Oh, he was a bad guy. Blah blah blah. Anyway, there's that. Boop. Anyway, I guess that's the end of the video. I would have to say I've seen the movie 4 times now, and I really do have to say that at the moment it is my favorite of the Spider-Man movies, which I think it's hard to say because it could be just because it's right now, but yeah. It's been probably my favorite, even though I do recognize there's so much of the success and my love of the movie relies on the nostalgia and playing into that. But the fact that they did it so well and they did it right and they did it so well justifies, to my mind, justifies the nostalgia bait. And so I'm sticking with it. My love of this movie. I don't like to put a number. I don't know that I can put a number on any of this thing. We'll say 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. Sounds good. All right. Good. Ciao. Sayonara. Aloha. So long. Bye now. Auf Wiedersehen. Bye-bye. Das Vidania. Buenos dias. Das Vidania. Das Vidania?
He's a serious man. He's a serious man. A serious man. A serious man.